All right, time to put UFC 261 officially to bed. One of the most violent, vicious, and memorable nights in recent UFC history. I'm Ariel Helwani. That is Brett Okamoto. It went down in Jacksonville, Florida. It was a very anticipated main card. And in the end, it gave us a lot to talk about. The big news, of course, Kamaru Usman is still the UFC welterweight champion. He defeats Jorge Masvidal via second round TKO, just the second time in Jorge Masvidal's great career that he loses via strikes, the first time back in 2008. And this is also the first time that he's stopped via strikes or submission since 2009. An unbelievable streak there, and just goes to show how good Kamaru Usman is. He's now won 14 straight in the UFC, second longest winning streak to start a UFC career behind the great Anderson Silva, who won 16 straight to start his career. And he is still the champion. We also got a new champion in the strawweight division. Rose Namajunas defeated Zhang Weili in the first round. Beautiful head kick, which led to some strikes. And she is now the first female in UFC history to win the same title in two separate occasions. So history made there. Valentina Shevchenko completely dominated Jessica Andrade to retain the flyweight title. We'll talk about that and a whole lot more here on the wrap up. Let's start with the main event, though, Brett. What a performance by Kamaru Usman, possibly his greatest to date. He continues to evolve. He continues to impress. What's your overall, first thought on what he did out there tonight against Jorge Masvidal?
It's hard to put into words, man. It's hard to put this whole night into words. I mean, I think every MMA fan went through a roller coaster of emotions tonight, right? I mean, this card from the very beginning was just ridiculous in terms of the fans being back, and I think that's halfway emotional for a lot of us. After the year that we've all been through and the different circumstances, so to just have fans back, whether you were even for or against the UFC's decision to do that, hearing the crowd was obviously something pretty powerful. And then the way that the prelims went, and then the main card, we talk about these nights sometimes where it's just one after another after another. It's almost like it's building to something, and every fight just sort of almost eclipsed the last one. And so the bar was high for Kamaru, and he just leapt over it, man. I mean, what that guy did tonight was nothing short of phenomenal. And I got to say that in that first round, I mean, I thought that Usman won, but I also thought that, hey, if I'm a Jorge guy, I'm okay with the way the fight's going. Kamaru was getting a little wild there at the end. Jorge looked like he was in phenomenal shape. He looked quick. He looked good. That was a good, motivated, confident version of Jorge Masvidal, and Kamaru put him out in a way in which, based on the numbers and the stats that you just gave, you laid it out, has not happened in a very long time or ever, considering, what perspective you're looking at it from. So Kamaru is the man. You cannot deny him of that. He is a guy who, it took a long time for him to get to the top of this division. Now he's got it, and he is putting his stamp on it. There's no question about it.
Yeah, fifth victory in a UFC welterweight title fight, tying the great Pat Miletich. The only ones who have more in UFC welterweight title fights, George St. Pierre and Matt Hughes. So he's starting to enter that rarefied air. And, not that long ago, he was 30% Usman. He was Snoozman. You can't say that anymore. I mean, this guy is not in boring fights. He's not a boring fighter. Even the Masvidal fight from last July, I thought he fought the right game plan. I didn't consider that boring per se, but then you look at the Gilbert Burns fight, you look at the Colby Covington fight. But before that, I mean, this guy is continuing to raise the bar and get better each and every time we see him. And afterwards, he threw out, hey, I'm the pound for pound king. And you know what? He wasn't really in that talk going into this fight, but with Khabib retired, I actually think you look at his resume and you can make a very strong case that he is the best pound for pound fighter on the planet right now. And by the way, even if Khabib was around, I think you can make that case because of the 14 straight inside the octagon. What do you think of that statement?
Yeah, absolutely. I think he was in that conversation coming into this. He didn't have a stranglehold on that conversation. He wasn't I don't even think the leading candidate to be in that conversation. I think John Jones was, widely considered the number one coming in, and probably will be considered the number one coming out of this. But I think if you're going to start talking about other names that are around John Jones, Kamaru was in that conversation coming into this. And it's like we said coming into this event, Kamaru is at that point in his career where he's about to enter this run of really big, high profile fights. And sometimes being the number one pound for pound, sometimes that's part of it. It's just getting people to pay attention to you and to acknowledge you in a way that maybe they weren't looking at you. They didn't have a magnifying glass on you before. And now when you start to look at, well, this guy is in the conversation, let's really split hairs. Let's start to dig into this. Is he on the level of John Jones? I mean, I don't know how you can say that he's not. I think that those two are very, very close, especially when you consider John's activity, how close some of his recent fights have been. It doesn't look like we're going to see him anytime soon. If our pound for pound rankings come out to next week on ESPN, I would anticipate John still being number one, but it would not shock me if Kamaru was number two. And to your point about him being 30% Usman and people saying that he's boring, I got to disagree with you. I mean, last July was extremely boring. The manner in which he beat Jorge Masvidal the first time was very, very boring. But I think now what we've seen is that wasn't the real Usman. Just like that wasn't the real Masvidal, that was not the real Usman. So for him to come out and to finish the fight in the manner in which he did tonight, I mean, yeah, the guy is on his way. And I think if he's not pound for pound number one after this fight, give him one more, and I think he'll be there.
And the big question surrounding his career, in my opinion, was his striking. And I don't think you can give all the credit to Trevor Whitman because he was a part of, the Henry Hoof squad for quite some time. But I do think Trevor Whitman deserves a lot of love for what he's done with him. That right hand was a thing of beauty. I remember when he fought Colby Covington not that long ago, his striking looked, it looked a little stiff. He was landing shots, but he was also eating a lot of shots as well. He went in there and knocked out Jorge Masvidal. That's an incredible feat. A guy who does not get rocked, let alone knocked out, throughout his career and in his 50th pro fight to boot. And so he dusts off Masvidal. There's no controversy there. He can put that rivalry, in the rearview mirror. And now it's Colby Covington next. Not often that we know who's next the night of a title fight, but they've been very clear about this. They showed him on TV multiple times. They had him in the back, all that stuff. And so it was very clear that they were pushing this. I didn't hate that. I like when the next guy is, right there at the event and we all know and there's no controversy. Do you feel like they're getting this right? Despite the fact that Colby has only, fought once, won once against Tyron Woodley since his loss to Kamaru Usman. Do you feel like this was the right call?
Yeah, I do. And you don't, at least me personally, I don't feel completely 100% great about it because, we know that there have been situations in which Colby could have accepted the fight against Leon Edwards and did not have any interest in that. And so, from a standpoint of earning it and, really, you lost to the champion, you got to work your way back. I don't know if one win over Tyron Woodley should necessarily do it. So you almost kind of don't want to reward the sense of, hey, Leon Edwards has been right there. He's been right there. That fight has made sense multiple times and you haven't shown any interest in it. But you also can't blame Colby for not taking it because he has stood his ground. He's waited for it. He said, I don't really have much to gain by beating Leon Edwards. And in the end, he's right. So on one hand, it doesn't sit perfectly with me that that fight was an obvious fight to make and Colby never had interest in it. But how can you blame the guy if at the end of the day, he's there, he's front row, he's the one who's going to get the title shot, and it is the right move. He took Kamaru Usman to the 5th round. That fight was very, very competitive, and I expect it to be competitive again.
Yeah, it was a really great fight. I mean, it was a contender for fight of the year. It was one of the last fights of 2019. So I'm curious to see it again. A bit of debate whether or not he broke Colby's jaw. The buildup will be fun. It will be heated once again. Do feel for Edwards, who, is now unbeaten in his last 9 and is fighting next month. And, look, Colby sat out for quite some time. So I figure if Edwards beats Nathan Diaz, he'll sit out as well. But the timing just never seems to work out for that guy. But what a moment. What a moment for Kamaru Usman. What a win. What a finish. We'll see where Jorge Masvidal goes from here. His manager, Abe Kawa, tweeting that he'll be back. So I don't know if he'll get another shot at the belt as long as Usman is champion, but I suspect that he's not going to retire anytime soon. Let's talk now about what happened in the co-main event. Rose Namajunas is the new strawweight champion, first female in UFC history to win the same title on 2 separate occasions. What a freaking win. Knocking down the, unflappable Zhang Weili with a beautiful head kick and then finishing her via strikes. Very emotional afterwards. This was a woman who said she was considering retiring after she lost the belt 2 years ago to Jessica Andrade, comes all the way back to win the title again. If you would have told me before Rose is going to win this fight, I would have believed you. I don't think I know she was a small underdog. Yeah. Okay, cool. But to win like that in the first round with a head kick, I was floored. I was shocked. How about you?
I was floored because that was a sensational knockout, but not from the sense of like, it's stunning in the way that any knockout of that type is stunning, but not shocking in the way that we've seen her do it. We've seen her do it, man. And it seems like an easy 2020 hindsight type thing to say, but when I do believe Rose has the most pure talent in that division. I really do. I mean, I think that's you can argue it a little bit, but in my mind, it's not really debatable. When what the things that she does and the way the versatility that she has in her striking, and then even her submission game, which we all know from earlier in her career, is impeccable, and it's artistic. It's I mean, what she does is hard to replicate. I mean, Ioane and Jacek and Weili Zhang, they had a brilliant fight in 2020. They stood in front of each other. They went toe to toe. They showed their heart and their will in that fight, but in terms of like a certain skill, I don't think anyone has shown in one sense to be as skillful as Rose, and that includes even Joanna, who I consider to be one of the best female strikers we've ever seen in the sport. So it did not stun me that it did not shock me that she finished the fight in the manner in which she did. We just know that she's capable of those finishes. With Rose, it's always about living up to her potential, and can she stay consistent? And we talked about this before the fight. I think that there's an opportunity there now for Rose to be consistent. I thought that she was in a good mind space. Set aside her miscalculation, her misstatement. It was a poor choice of words. It was a poor thing to say before the fight, and she apologized for it. Set that aside. I really liked how she carried herself coming into this fight. I think she's coming into her own. I said it again when you and I were talking. She's only 28. She's entering her prime. We forget sometimes how young she is and all the experience that she has accumulated over time. She lost the inaugural title fight. She worked her way back up to it. She had those experiences against Joanna, lost it, thought about leaving the sport, now has come back and has it again. It would not shock me. I know for a fact that she is capable of holding this belt for a long time. And now we'll see if Rose can beat Rose, because that's always been her biggest challenge, I think, is wanting to be in there, wanting to accept all the things that come along with being a champion. She said the right thing. She said she wants to take it. Now we'll see, because those things are going to come, and they're going to come even more with a performance like that and a knockout like that. The spotlight is going to be back on her, and I hope that she embraces it and does well with it.
So if you ask me, and I want to get your take on this as well, that was too quick and too decisive to run it back right away. And so I think the biggest loser outside of Zhang Weili, of course, from this result is Ioane on Jacek, because I would have maybe expected them to run it back. Zhang Weili, Ioane and Jacek 2 had Zhang won. She did not win. And so now I look at the Carla Esparza, Yan Xiaonan fight, and what a story that would be if Carla Esparza wins. Now you have a situation where Rose has a chance to avenge the first loss of her career back many moons ago, Ultimate Fighter finale. That would be great. Yan is turning into a potential star out of China as well. And then I would match up Joanna and Mackenzie Dern. I would love one day to see Mackenzie Dern and Rose Namajunas, but I think she needs to get over that hump as well. Do you agree with that scenario? Like, I don't think I saw someone ask Dana White about running it back right away. I don't think that makes sense. And I love the idea of a potential Carla Esparza, Rose Namajunas rematch.
The only thing I don't like about what you just said is Mackenzie Dern and Ioane on Jacek. And that's only because I think Mackenzie could be victimized by her own success. I just don't think that she needs to fight Ioane yet. And maybe I think I'll probably be in the minority on that. Once you've moved up the rankings and you're in that top 10, you got to be ready for everything that's coming. But I almost feel like that would be a disservice to have Mackenzie fight Ioane. Mackenzie really has not been in the sport as long. Her striking is coming along well. Let's not disrupt that by putting her in there with a Muay Thai champion like Joanna. I just don't. I think I could see why from a number sense it makes sense, but to me it just doesn't make sense. And also from the standpoint of Joanna, we know what she brings to the table. Unfortunately, she has lost to Rose twice, but I don't need to see Joanna beat Mackenzie Dern to know that she's championship material. So in a weird way, I would almost be fine if Joanna just continued to sit. She seems like she's loving life outside of the octagon, right? I mean, all of her Instagram posts, she looks extremely happy. She's doing plenty of different things. She's having plenty of opportunities. She's kind of made it known that she's only interested in title opportunity. And I kind of understand that. I mean, that might rub some fans the wrong way of like, hey, you can't just be given a title shot. But hey, she fought Weili Zhang to a split decision. Some people thought she won that fight. If she doesn't want to get up and fight like a Mackenzie Dern, I don't really necessarily blame her for that. I'm not in a rush to see Joanna fight Mackenzie. Again, I can understand.
But then who does she fight? Because Rose beat her twice. She's just not going to fight.
I think she could wait.
Wait for what? What if Rose never loses the belt? She's never fighting again.
I think eventually you can do a third fight with
really
with Rose and Joanna. I don't know if you can do it right now as Rose's first title defense, but I do think that fight is there. I mean, even though we've seen that fight twice and Rose has won it twice, I mean, we're talking about Carla Esparza. You can't tell me that if Carla Esparza even wins her next fight and then fights for the title, it would do better or draw more interest than a Joanna trilogy, even though Joanna is 0-2. So I think that
It's a good story. You tell that story that she beat her, she choked her out the first time they
it's
fought.
not a bad story, but I mean, you and I both know. Which pay-per-view do you want to invest in? If you got Rose and the Joanna trilogy, or you have Rose and Carla too? I mean, the Rose and Joanna one is going to draw far more attention. So I just don't think that Joanna is in a position where she has to fight. I really don't. I think that she could potentially get a trilogy with Rose by waiting. She wants to come back, great. I would love to see her, but if she doesn't, I understand where she's coming from, and I don't really need to see her beat one of these other top ranked girls before I see her fight Rose. I know that the caliber that Joanna is already.
All right. Well, bottom line, I think we could agree the division has been shaken up a little bit. So they have a few options that they can go with here, and a great story. You know, I feel for Zhang. She's a tremendous fighter. No doubt she'll be back. But you know, hard not to feel really happy for Rose as well, considering, you know, like we talked about, she wears her emotion on her sleeve. So that allows the audience, I think, to become emotionally invested in her journey. And, you know, last year was a tough year for her, losing 2 family members due to COVID, her talking openly about wanting to retire. There she was with the belt, with Pat Barry by her side. It was a nice moment. And by the way, how about Trevor Whitman leading Rose to another victory in a massive title fight, and then doing what he did with Kamaru Usman in the main event as well. So one division that has not been shaken up and does not appear to be shaken up for a very long time is the women's flyweight division. Valentina Shevchenko proving once again that she is so far and away better than any other flyweight on the planet. And, you know, she had that look on her face after she defeated Jessica Andrade in the second round. Vicious crucifix. By the way, her career high as far as takedowns in a fight, in a single fight, going into tonight, 5. She had 7 in about a round and a half or so. She proved a point. She annihilates Jessica Andrade with those vicious elbows in the crucifix position. And then when she gets up after the referee stops the fight, she looks around. She's like, "This is the person that you guys thought would be my toughest test at 125. Get out of here with that." I loved how she came out there and tried to prove a point, especially after the Maya fight back in November, when we all went gaga over the fact that she lost 1 round. She, in my opinion, didn't have to remind people who she was, but just in case they were doubting, she reminded people tonight. It was very impressive.
It absolutely was. It says something when the champion is so good that she's worried about more than just winning a fight, that she's worried about actually winning in a way that addresses some questions that some of us were bringing up beforehand. I don't even think that there were that many of us bringing them up. It's just like, we got to have something to talk about, Valentina. You're annihilating all these women. So let us get a little bit excited about Jessica Andrade. Like, God forbid we get excited a little bit about a challenger. And she took that to heart, which is what you want champions to do. You want them to have that such a high competitive spirit that how dare anyone even think that this person has a chance against me. I mean, that's what makes Valentina so great. You know, people ask champions all the time when they're dominant, what's going to keep you motivated? What's going to keep you going? And what she's told me is she says, "I'm from Kyrgyzstan. Like, do you understand how many there's a lot of talented fighters in Kyrgyzstan, but you don't hear about them, you don't see about them, and that's because they're just out of sight, out of mind. They're so far away that the UFC is not looking at them. They could have a great fighter over in Kyrgyzstan, but they don't even want to sign them because of all the problems it takes to get visas. So if you bring them over here, you know, they don't speak English oftentimes. This is a world in which, like, I've dedicated my entire life to be here, so I'm not going to give it up on one particular night." And I believe her after all of these performances she's putting on. And I think that there is an argument, there is at least a conversation that you and I can have. I don't know if it's tonight or some other night, that is this the greatest female fighter of all time? Is it not Amanda Nunes? I actually think that is a conversation we could realistically have and make good points on both sides.
If Amanda Nunes wins her next fight against Juliana Pena, is it time to do the trilogy?
It's always time to do the trilogy, right? Because these 2 women are so far head and shoulders above everyone else that you could, I mean, if you were given the option of, you can see Amanda Nunes and Valentina Shevchenko sign up right now for a best of 5 tournament moving forward over the next year and a half, over the next 2 years, they're only going to fight one another. It's going to be a best of 5 series. We know that nothing is going to happen in between. They're not going to fight anybody else, or they can keep doing what they're doing and face these other challengers. But if you didn't pick them fighting each other, you would at least consider it, right? I mean, how would you answer that question?
Oh yeah, like a best of 7 would be tremendous.
Right. So that question of, is it the right time for the trilogy? It's always the right time for the trilogy, because you could have it every week, and it would arguably be the best way to have the female to operate the female divisions right now. So I don't expect it to be next. I think you let Valentina continue to do what she's doing. She's not she's not losing any interest. She told me she wants to continue doing this for a long time. Her coach Pavel told me that they're both, her and her sister Antonina, they're not even close to retirement. They're going to continue to do this for a long time. So there's that trilogy is not really going anywhere, at least on the Shevchenko side. Nunes has talked about hanging him up, but now she's being active. I mean, she's already booked her next fight. So I don't think I tend to not think we'll see it this year. If we see it, fine. But it's going to happen at some point, right? It is going to happen. So that's almost why the question of when is it going to happen, I almost don't worry about it, because I just believe it will happen at some point.
Yeah, I mean, they're showing no signs of slowing down. They don't have a lot of competition. I also don't think it happens this year. Maybe next year. There's still some other names out there: Joanne Calderwood and Cynthia Calvillo, Lauren Murphy. There are some names she hasn't fought. Still think the gap between Shevchenko and the rest of the 125ers is so great. I think we all thought Andrade could potentially give her toughest test, but I love the fact that she almost like rises to the occasion when the opponent is potentially, greater. So maybe the Maya fight she sleepwalked through. And also remember, she was coming off knee surgery in that fight, so a little rusty. She likes to be active. She was absolutely phenomenal in this fight. I have to say, though, as great as those last three fights were, and how, incredible those performances were, and how we could all be buzzing over them, I felt like the last three fights, I was like in a fog watching them after what happened to Chris Weidman, after seeing what happened to Chris Weidman. In case you missed it, literally seconds into his fight against Uriah Hall, rematch, highly anticipated rematch, he kicks Hall. Hard to say if he checked the leg kick or not, or if it just landed in the wrong spot, but it was almost carbon copy what happened to Anderson Silva against Chris Weidman back in 2013 at UFC 168. I mean, the freakest of occurrences for it to happen to Weidman after that infamous moment with Anderson Silva. And then you see the leg dangling and you see the pain. And I mean, it was just, honestly, I don't even have anything to say other than it was heartbreaking. It was gutting. It was horrific to watch. We've seen this injury before in MMA: Corey Hill, Tyrone Spong in kickboxing, Anderson Silva, most notably. People come back, but to see a guy like Chris Weidman go through that, especially after just losing his father-in-law, horrific accident, I was in a fog for the rest of the night. And that's going to be the thing that I'll be thinking about as I lay my head on the pillow tonight.
Yeah, there's not much else to say about it. I mean, we can talk about whether or not he'll come back. We can talk about whether, but it almost doesn't. That's not a conversation for tonight. I mean, you just hope that you hope the best for Chris. You hope the best for his family. He's a guy who has been around the sport for a long time. I mean, I can still remember him, those media scrums, before he fought Anderson Silva, and the confidence that he was brimming with. And you were just like, does this guy know he's fighting Anderson Silva? And then he does it with the Tom Petty walkout, and some of the performances after that, the title defenses. He's always been great with the media. He's been great with the fans. I mean, it's just a very, very well liked, well respected guy in the sport. So you hate to see it happen to anybody, but see it happen to Chris Weidman, and then just the surrealness of the fact that it happens to him when he was the guy in there with Anderson Silva, and yeah, it looked exactly the same. It's just hard to wrap your head around. It was amazing.
So we're told he's scheduled to have surgery on Wednesday. It was a very bad break. I mean, do not go out of your way to see it. If you missed it, maybe you will now do so. But just really hard to kind of move on and celebrate the sport when this is one of the harsh realities of the sport. So we do want to send our best to Chris and hope that he makes a very speedy recovery. And then prior to that, you have Jimmy Crute and Anthony Smith, and another freak leg injury. Obviously not quite the same, but Jimmy Crute couldn't stand up after being kicked in the leg, and credit to him for trying to go. But it was one of those things, like we saw with Michael Chandler back in the day. We saw it with Demetrius Johnson and Henry Cejudo. The leg was just continuing to give out on him. And amazing that almost a year to the day in the same building where Anthony Smith got absolutely annihilated by Glover Teixeira, and how uncomfortable that was, we see him get a big win like this over a youngster like Jimmy Crute. And I don't think it's fair to take anything away from Anthony Smith here. Like, he won that fight fair and square, but just kind of another weird, like the first two fights on that main card, just bizarre, especially both involving legs.
Super bizarre. Yeah. I mean, I didn't feel too odd about the first one, just because, or at least accepting the result of it, that because Anthony had looked so good. I mean, that jab, how can you be in like your 50-second pro fight and all of a sudden pull out of I mean, it's not like the guy's never thrown a jab before, but that jab we saw tonight, that was something a little different. And that was very, very impressive. And it set up, the leg kick, because all Crute was thinking about was the jab about 3-4 minutes into that round. So, yeah, I mean, it was just an unfortunate ending, but you kind of felt like, okay, we saw this matchup, and Anthony was great, which was great to see, because it wasn't too long ago, as you mentioned, with the Sheriff fight and then rushing back to fight Alexander Rakic. I mean, after that, what was it, 3 months after he lost to Glover Teixeira, he came scrambling back to that, and you just kind of wondered, what's the guy doing? I mean, what is he? Does he just want to take fights? Like, this does not seem like a smart decision, and then he loses that fight. But now he's come back, beat Devin Clark, and this is one where I thought maybe this was going to be a torch passing situation. I think a lot of us did. And he looked great. So yeah, I hope that none of the shine is worn off from the way in which it ended, because although that was unusual, Anthony deserves all the credit for it.
All right, before we wrap this up, Randy Brown, Dwight Grant, Brendan Allen, Pat Sabatini, Dana Batgarel, Rodrigo Vargas, Jeff Molina, Ariane Camalosi, anyone that we didn't talk about on the prelims that you want to highlight? Maybe you want to highlight the crowd and how unique it was to see everyone back in there. Any final thoughts before we say goodnight?
I don't think so. I think all the names you mentioned, of course, were the guys that stood out for various reasons. I don't think we need to necessarily dig into any of them specifically. I think it's interesting that Nick Diaz has looked in such incredible shape. It was nice to see him there. Whether or not he takes a fight, Dana White, the press conference, saying that he wants to and that they were going to speak this evening. So I'm sure all of us will be interested to hear what comes out of that. But again, whether he takes a fight or not, it was nice to see a healthy looking Nick Diaz sitting there enjoying himself at the fights. It's I mean, that guy is MMA royalty. So on a night like this, it was nice to see him there.
Amen to that. And yeah, we'll see. His brother's fighting in less than a month, and he's usually around when Nathan is fighting. So all of a sudden, the Diaz brothers back in business. They kind of come in waves. They go away for a long time, and then they're back again. That's the next pay-per-view, of course, headlined by Charles Oliveira versus Michael Chandler for the vacant lightweight title fight, and title, I should say. And we found out as well today, they made it official that Marvin Vettori will get the next middleweight title fight against Israel Adesanya on June 12th. So the action continues to roll along. For now, though, we are out of time. Congratulations to Kamaru Usman, to Rose Namajunas, to Valentina Shevchenko, to all the winners. Our best once again to Chris Weidman and Jimmy Crute, who of course suffered that leg injury. Thank you for watching our coverage of UFC 261. We'll see you next time.
Thanks for watching ESPN on YouTube. For live streaming, sports, and premium content, subscribe to ESPN+.